Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pilosopo podcast. I'm your host. My name is Jiggy Jr. We're actually here at the feria of the Radisson Blu Hotel, Cebu. And I am with the former Congressman and former Defense Secretary, now running for Senator, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, Gibo Teodoro.
Good morning, Jiggy Jr., and to all the podcast viewers. Pleasant good morning to everyone, and mayong buntag sa tanan.
Thank you so much, Gibo, for spending time with us here for this podcast. And I think my first question is, like I warned you earlier, you know, we were big fans, we were supporters and followers of Gibo Teodoro when you first ran for, I think, Vice President, right?
President.
For President, right?
Yes.
With
Edu
Manzano as your Vice President.
Yes.
We were all rooting for you, and then you sort of disappeared from the face of the earth. What happened to you, and why did you decide to get out of the limelight after that?
Well, after that, let me preface. In my meeting the Avance, I said that if I were not elected at that time, I said, I would do things that I still can do. There's a big world to explore. There's a lot of knowledge to be gained. And I was 45 at that time, or 46. It was the right time to do it. So I told the voters very clearly. I mean, perhaps this is a culmination of a peak, and I advocate everybody take a break once in a while. My break turned out to be not a break, but another learning opportunity. I joined the corporate sector. I became a member as independent director of several boards, chairman of a company, and other companies. So my exposure in the private sector for the first 3 or 4 years after that was a learning experience. I joined the board of a big financial institution, and I'd advocate, some exposure to the private sector for policymakers, so they'll know how it feels to be on the other side, the stresses that corporations and other private individuals feel from government policy. It has also taught me a lot, like ESG concepts, corporate social responsibility, and other emerging trends, which perhaps if I stayed in government, I would not have picked up on. So I come back this time, post-pandemic. The pandemic was a game changer, and I think that it changed lives of a lot of people, probably permanently, if this is the new normal. And probably that's why I can contribute, because I have experience in the private sector, which is crucial to the recovery of this country. And perhaps I can better judge now what can and cannot be done, and if things can be done, what the timelines are. I've gotten more experience with private sector management, with goals, targets that need to be met, and planning goals that need to be followed. So it's more science-based management than political management, but I believe that politics can use a bit of
Science, yeah?
Yeah, especially now.
Okay, well, let's go back just a little bit. When you ran for president, you were one of politics' fastest rising stars, right? I mean, you were, everybody was at least in my neck of the woods, was rooting for you. And I think you didn't win the presidential elections, had some lessons to it, right? What do you think were the lessons for you when you lost that election, and what can you use those lessons for this particular time around when you're running for public office, this time as senator?
I think anybody who has ran pre-pandemic the lessons, probably the game has changed a lot.
Okay.
I don't want to call it a game. I'm sorry for using that term, but the ways of approaching it are evolving. The audience is much younger. Information is relayed much differently now, which doesn't necessarily make it easier, because sometimes the political debate reduces complex concepts, and we must always realize that governance, you're governing a system, not
Very complicated, right?
yeah, and there's no linear relationship between problem and solution at times. No, however, the information age, you're reduced to one-liners, which to me is a challenge.
Actually, Gibo, I beg to disagree. I think because of the internet, with podcasts like this, we can actually have a long, drawn-out conversation about whatever you want to talk about the nuances of governing. It's just that probably your time that we don't have enough of. But I think if you'll give me time, I can talk to you for hours if you don't mind.
Right. No, but the target audience basically
Yes.
has limited time.
Of course, yes,
And they have limited resources
Yeah.
to load up.
Correct,
Because,
yeah.
you know, it costs money.
Yeah.
And so the challenge being, even before, no, in a presidential campaign, the presidential candidate gets most of the time on stage.
Yeah.
Senatorial candidates, you're given about 3 to 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So you have to do something that makes people remember you,
Yeah.
whatever that may be. Same here now, in a different way. The challenge is to message succinctly
Yeah.
and creatively, because people don't have unlimited time, to surf, because they're prepaid, and time of day is crucial for them.
You mentioned earlier things have changed in the new normal, they call it, right?
Yeah.
My question here, Gibo, is why would you want to even go back to pre-pandemic times? I think those weren't the good old days as well, right?
No, you wouldn't want to go back to pre-pandemic times,
Yeah.
because to go back to pre-pandemic times would mean to say you go back to an old system,
Yeah.
which to me, I've always said it is already outdated, because
Exactly.
I believe that the political system we had now was designed or created to do one thing. It was to erase the vestiges of martial law, but it didn't look forward. And we can't continue to be governed
Exactly, yeah.
in this way. Even if we go back to the previous regimes, like the 73, the 35 Constitution, which views the Philippines as a unitary whole, where local autonomy, devolution, downloading of resources is more lip service than anything, we can't. We must remember we're 80% water, 20% land, and composed of a lot of islands. So the logistical nightmares have to be solved. Agility of governance must be there. Governments must have the ability to invest in emerging and disruptive technologies alongside the private sector. And our Constitution is manacles government from acting proactively. The thing is, challenge being is, there are a lot of unknowns in the future. And we must have a government that is agile enough to react. And by government, we mean not only the national government, but principally local governments. Being an archipelago leads to that.
You're right about there are a lot of unknowns in the future, but you mentioned science earlier, and you'd like to use science more in governing, if I'm not mistaken. You said that,
Yeah,
right?
the science of management,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. So, my
it's not a
question-
pure science,
Yeah.
but
Do you think that we will have better predicting skills with science behind us? For example, the pandemic, actually, a lot of people predicted the pandemic even before it happened, right? There was a huge speech by Bill Gates about the pandemic and that it was happening and nobody heeded it. Do you think the Philippine government will be able to use more science in predicting, in solving problems?
I do think so. And to segue, but answering the same problem, when people think of government, normally they think of elective officials, right? But there's a big void left in the minds of people that equally important is a capable, up-to-date, motivated bureaucracy. And that is your spinal cord, which generates these outputs for your elected policymakers to decide on. And if they have these railroad guides, basically, based on expertise, then the choices theoretically would be wiser choices. No? Of course, there are local political nuances that each legislator has to take into account and has an obligation to do so, but at least in the compromise that is made, a wiser decision can theoretically be made, no? If you have that bureaucracy in place.
So, science, do we even have the infrastructure to aid the government in moving forward? Do we have the expertise? Do we have the scientists? Do we have the doctors and all of that stuff to be able to use science more effectively as a government?
I think there's a modicum of them that can be a starting base right now. For example, when we talk about nuclear energy, do we have the capability? I'd say no at this time, because the human capital that was there when the first nuclear power plant was designed, they went abroad and we lost that capability. We have to regain it. I think governments and the private institutions through their CSR must invest more into research and development, developing expertise so that we become an innovative society rather than an outsourced destination. To me, that is crucial. And I'm happy to note that I heard in a program that there's a Balik Scientist program that's quite successful, actually, that scientists sent abroad to study are
Coming back here?
Yeah, and starting to impart their knowledge and partnering up with local venture capitalists to make things of use, no, that our country can use.
And speaking of sciences, why don't we employ the science of psychology, for example, to determine what motivates people and give them the right incentives, that sort of thing?
Of course, yeah, that's behavioral science is very, very important, actually, but that's the problem also, no, with our educational system. Once in a while, there are not enough applicants for non-sexy courses, no, because employability is also an issue. There's no receptacle for historians, anthropologists, things that we need in order to build a stable foundation, and particularly in international relations too. You need the humanities, So we need also to give incentives to people to take these courses. On the other hand, too, we need to also uphold the dignity of human labor, because it's come to a point that everybody wants a diploma hanging on their wall, and one late professor has lamented that sometimes every diploma becomes an affront to the dignity of human labor. So those are the challenges and the calculations that you have to make. It's not an easy thing to do, and sometimes you don't get it right, but you have to keep on trying and trying and trying.
Speaking of diplomas, it's good that you mentioned that. We have a lot of candidates, even presidential candidates, who don't necessarily have the right quote-unquote diplomas, right? I'm curious, because you mentioned earlier that running a nation is very complicated, it's very nuanced, it requires a lot of skills, a lot of talents, and here we are, some candidates who are not necessarily what you would call a bright boy or bright girl, for that matter. I am confused, Gibo. Why is it that the system allows for people like that to run for office, when in fact running a nation is quite a complicated job?
Okay, I have two answers to that. Firstly, I think we feel it more because of the lack of resources of our bureaucracy really to stand out and operate. The bureaucracy can withstand political struggles and challenges. No, it's the stabilizing factor that stabilizes a nation in the face of political divisiveness or what have you. Secondly, it's also hard to place a blanket limitation, qualification requirement, because there are a lot of undiplomated people who are extremely learned. In Philippine politics, I remember that Blas F. Ople, for example, was not a college graduate, but he was extremely well-read and intelligent. My father's colleague, who is a literary and educational icon, Adrian Cristobal, he didn't graduate from college either. So it's hard. Like Bill Gates, did he have a degree? I don't think so. I don't think he finished. So
Should they take an exam at the minimum?
I don't think so. What's important perhaps is that number one, you have the bureaucracy, and number two, you have strong political parties, so that people participate in the choice of who the candidates will be. Right now, people don't have actual participation in who the candidates will be. They just vote for a preset
set of candidates, yeah.
set of candidates, yeah. And we don't have strong political parties. But then again, populism and is not a local phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a worldwide phenomenon. You have the Hugo Chavez's and the Evo Moraleses of the world. No?
Populism. The past few presidents that we've had were not majority presidents, and they were not voted by the majority of the people, right? And there's an idea that's been floating around, that was floated around by some of the political experts about a runoff in elections. Like once we have the top two candidates who don't get 50% of the population's vote, then you have a runoff and do another set of re-elections until the percentage of voters get to 51%, right? At least the president is a majority president. What do you think of that idea?
That's a good idea, perhaps, but I'd rather do two things first.
Okay.
One, we safeguard the electoral process first.
Okay.
The integrity of that process, let's make sure that votes are really processed and counted, and people have the time to make choices. Now, in order to do that, there is one thing that I've been advocating for a long time. Separate national and local elections, not at the same time.
Why is that?
Well, so people have more time to separate the issues.
Okay.
So a local candidate will be campaigning based on local issues, and
Correct, yeah.
the national and the local are separate. Why have local autonomy when you have national election and local elections at the same time? So what's the agenda? And who has the time? Which citizen has the time to digest these issues separately? And the ballot is so long, what do they end up doing? They just shortcut, they don't vote for complete slates. And block voting is not allowed.
Yeah. So we have to even elect the vice president, right?
Right. So for me, before we do a runoff, let's do these things first.
Okay, first things first.
Yeah.
You're running for Senator of the Republic of the Philippines. You have been a congressman, you were a defense secretary for a while during the GMA administration and all of that, and you went to the private sector. You've learned so much, you have gathered so much wisdom, so to speak, or really, from the private and the public sphere. What are you going to bring to the table once you become Senator of the Republic?
Well, I originally had a 7-point agenda, which is on the gibo.ph page, but a lot of this can be reduced to making sure that there is an honest to goodness devolution of powers and downloading of funds to local government units that can conform to performance governance standards that the national government can set. No? Why? Because the local governments are really your points of contact with your people, and you have to capacitate them. Firstly, because they're the first points of contact, and secondly, we're an archipelago. Conditions are so different from between point A and point B within the different provinces or within one province alone. So a fit-all formula dictated by a central agency, one-size-fits-all, will not work. And that needs a lot of time, of course, watching over your General Appropriations Act, the National Expenditure Plan, and also on your oversight function, seeing to it in the face of a lot of unspent national government funds. Had these funds been downloaded, they could have perhaps been used much better. Secondly, you institutionalize the role of your local officials. Your barangay officials are not compensated. They don't have any incentives. Your barangay secretaries, they certify documents. They face criminal cases if something goes wrong because of falsification or anti-graft. They're not compensated. Your barangay health workers are volunteers in the literal sense. They have some benefits depending on the local government units, but if they lose their lives or whatnot, they're not covered at all. So how can you have a capacitated local government function when at the spear, the tip of the spear, they're not incentivized, or neither incentivized nor protected?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think incentives are a key feature of good governance, right? I think
Yes.
it's crucial that we have to have the right incentives. What do you think is a problem, Gibo? Why can't we have the right incentives?
To me, it's hypocrisy. The philosophy is public service is a public trust. You should do it for free. But Lee Kuan Yew oft repeated, it went viral a few months ago. You can't get good government on the cheap.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's really Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
Once again, behavioral science, as you
Absolutely.
said.
Yes.
You gotta motivate people.
Yeah. So why not? Why haven't we been doing that? Because we don't have the right people in government to give the right incentives.
No, probably everybody is afraid also to admit that we have needs. We need to, we need our families to feel secure. Also.
Yeah, we are addicted to food. We have to eat, right?
Yeah, we gotta eat. See, so if you don't do that, then of course there have been pay increases. There have been big improvements, but still, it's probably not enough.
I heard that you're a licensed pilot, right?
I surrendered my
You
license.
surrendered it. Anyway, I'm still going to ask you a pilot question.
Sure.
If the Philippines were an airplane, where are we now? Are we still in the runway? Are we already launching or flying mid-air? Or are we already on our way down? Where are we now as a country? And where would you want to steer us?
Well, all countries in the world now are back on the runway.
Okay, back on the runway.
All.
Okay, all of us.
Now it's a race.
Okay.
And we gotta take off as fast as possible.
How do we make that happen?
Well, number one, by increasing the vaccination rates.
Okay.
That's crucial.
Okay.
Because what we know is vaccinated people are more resistant to fatalities than non-vaccinated people. In order for our consumption economy to open. Secondly, the private sector must be given all the support by the government so that the economy with its multiplier effects open. Thirdly, I think although we are slowly reducing our tax rates. We still have to incentivize a lot of private sector involvement and synergy, with government. And the regulations of government right now, we cannot have first world standards in a third world country. For example, we want to, right now I read a 40-page paper the other day. I skimmed through it, that there's an energy crisis once again worldwide because of perhaps hasty implementation of green energy. And so now there's an oil crisis in the offing. The industrialized countries are encouraging OPEC, oil-producing countries, to produce more oil. And so this will increase the price once again. While here we are, we want first world standards, but our people are plagued with high power costs. And whether we pollute or not, we're affected by climate change anyway, because India and China still continue to do so. So that's the problem. We should set our goals to those that are achievable.
Achievable goals, chop them down into achievable
Yes,
parts, right?
yes.
The problems.
Particularly now, but if we can accelerate the rate, and the key here, if you accelerate the rate, is sustainability. Can it be sustained? If it can't be sustained, then we're going to have a problem, because we're going to fall into a debt trap.
Gibo, you're running for senator under whose presidency? I mean, who's the presidential candidate?
We do not have a presidential candidate.
Okay, all right.
I'm a member of the People's Reform Party, and the executive committee of the party, of which I'm not a member, has yet to decide who our presidential candidate will be. But we have officially adopted Mayor Inday Sara Duterte as our vice presidential candidate.
But no president yet.
No.
But will there be one eventually?
I suppose so. I joined the PRP because, of course, Senator Miriam and I share a common background from the UP College of Law, although she was a pure scholar, really, legal scholar. I was not. It is a party which has given me the freedom. I told them I've been gone for 10 years. I have to reintroduce myself once again to the public. So they spared me from having to make decisions or commitments other than making myself once again known to the public. And they agreed that I can campaign on my platform, or which is an evolving platform, can't be achieved in the near term, of Bagong Pilipinas para sa bagong henerasyon, which involves really the re-engineering of the country. And I use
re-engineering of the country.
Oh,
Those are big words, right, Gibo?
Yeah.
How do we do that? I think one of the biggest problems of any nation, for that matter, is that progress is
you use
slow,
the word
right?
nation. I don't call the Philippines a nation. I call it a state.
A state. State. Okay. Why is that? Why is that?
It's multinational,
Okay.
multicultural.
Okay.
A state is a political concept.
All right.
And that's what we're running.
All right.
We're governing a political unit.
All right.
And that is a state. A nation is a cultural concept.
All right.
And it's hard to confuse
All right.
both,
So my question is, progress is really slow, right? There are no overnight successes, especially
No.
when it comes to state building or nation building. And you said you were going to re-engineer. You want to do that. So what's the first step like? And will we be able to see once you start the re-engineering during a Gibo senatorial tenure? Will we be able to see the early results of a re-engineered government?
No.
If
No, you can't. You can't. Because people have to trust
yeah.
any re-engineering
Yeah.
done. No. I would like to regroup political units, not merely into the traditional regional groupings, but functional ones, ones that have synergies, ones that where you can create hubs and spokes where the hubs can answer for the medical, logistical, and other needs of the smaller political units that where they people will live and come in to work or to do things. Secondly, I don't have all the answers. The second part of that is para sa bagong henerasyon. I need to find out what they see their future as being, so that we can lay the foundations for them to continue. But I'm sure that development of the different disparate units, properly planned, properly done, in other areas you cannot anymore, because it would be too expensive and too disruptive already. But in other areas, there's still greenfield areas in the rest of the country where you can properly plan these communities, plan proper governance, proper political units where you can deliver basic services efficiently. We must remember that livable areas in this country is a slowly diminishing commodity in the face of our population increase and in the face of geohazards that are appearing, to include, of course, sea water level rise. No, yeah. So all of these have to be taken into account. Once again, the science of forming political units based on habitable areas and supportable areas. No? And the real important thing is what are the aspirations of the young people? What do they want to see?
That's a good question that we should ask them, right?
Exactly. That's why I opened that Gibo.ph page to receive feedback from them. There's a lot of skeptics who say, "Hey, what will a humble tricycle driver or habal-habal driver have to input?" He has something or she has something to input. Why does she or he work? Because they want to build a stable future for their loved ones or for themselves if they're young enough. So their vision counts.
Everybody counts.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, sir, that you need to be able to deliver your message succinctly in this age of information where everything's so fast, right? What do you think is, because you have to reintroduce yourself to an entire generation, right? You disappeared for almost a decade, right?
Yes.
Or even more than that. What is the succinct, or what's the quick elevator pitch for Gibo Teodoro?
Oh, that's a hard thing to do, and that's why you hire people to think for you. Although I haven't found the right person yet, perhaps. No. Kidding aside, probably the succinct way of doing it is a person with experience both in and out of government, and who has seen crisis, seen conflict firsthand. Experience in disaster risk reduction, although no expertise, and one who is answering the call of the times that each and every Filipino must answer, that each and every one of us must pitch in to help, because we're on the runway. We want to take off, and we want to be ahead of the pack.
I have a question that was given to me earlier that I'd love to ask you. Every time there's an election season coming up, it's always, the issues are always about corruption, somebody stealing this, somebody stealing that. The narrative is usually good versus evil, right? Like, he's good, he's bad, and I'm good, sort of narrative. But is it really about good and evil? Is it really about corruption, or is this just plain politics?
Well, sometimes it is, but right now corruption should be dealt with institutionally and not by a partisan political system. That's why you have to professionalize your I'm sorry, I don't want to use the term professionalize. Capacitate your investigative agencies and your disciplinary and administrative functions, while at the same time incentivizing good behavior rather than bad. So it is not always a choice between bad or good. But some people really make it that choice. And that divides the country more.
Yeah.
Because I really admire and follow closely the example of Pope Francis, where said that the best way that you can convince a person to follow the road that you think is good is by your own example rather than by telling the other person he or she is wrong. Because then you proselytize, and clericalism, proselytizing is bad.
Yeah. Okay.
He really is against that. That's
right.
why we saw he went to Iraq to meet the Caliph of the Islamic faith, and he went there as a humble pilgrim, not as the head of the church.
So lead by example.
Yeah, and I mean, respect your fellow man. I mean, nobody has a monopoly of good intentions and good faith.
If they want to get in touch with the Gibo Teodoro, where can they catch you? Because I know you have a website, a Facebook page,
Yes.
Instagram, and all of that. Why don't you invite them? Go ahead, sir.
Please log on to the Gibo.ph on Facebook and the website, and we have a team that will address your concerns, suggestions, your help, particularly also not only for the upcoming election, but for the bagong Pilipinas para sa bagong henerasyon. Your feedback is really important because nobody has a monopoly of answers. You have these promises na I will end corruption. I will solve the problem of poverty. No, you can assist in the solution, but the solution also lies in your input because you know best in your own area what's happening.
I know you're running for a national position as senator, but you're here in Cebu now. What is your message specifically to the Cebuanos out there listening or watching this podcast?
Well, I've always respected the Cebuanos, and I thank them for their support. I think we have established a very, very valuable rapport and trust, and I always feel at home here. And actually, coming from a landlocked province, don't know the jewels that you have here actually, and it's such a refreshing feeling being here in Cebu, where you feel most welcome. And actually, the other day, we had the privilege of visiting the Bolhoon Church, which is really a national treasure. I invite all Filipinos to visit it and to visit Cebu because it's a heritage that is preserved, needs everybody also to pitch in because it costs a lot of resources to preserve the heritage where the Philippines was founded. Basically, if Cebu were not the first place that a presence was established by the Spaniards, there would be no Philippines. I wonder what we would have been. So this is really the center of the Philippines, geographically and historically. So my message to the Cebuanos is to continue to love your language, your culture, your heritage, and to preserve this. And we want to see also the continuous improvements given the industriousness of the Cebuano people. And it's actually really paradise. Where can you see a metropolis where within an hour or so, you can be in a pristine
Beach resort?
beach resort. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and a
Sure.
few minutes you can go to the mountains as well, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, senatorial candidate Gibo Teodoro. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was my honor to be with you today, and I hope to be with you again.
All right. Maybe next time as senator, yes, of the Republic of the Philippines.
Hopefully so.
Thank you and good luck, sir. Good luck. Good luck.
Thank
good luck.
you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.